Okay, and if I share my screen with them, I want to see that. Go.
Where'd you go?
Hey, folks.
Here we go.
We're just, can they see that?
No, they can.
Okay, great. I just want to make sure you guys can see this document up here before we get started. I'm going to go back to seeing me. Good. I think we're ready to go.
Okay. Real quick, you don't have, because you're not actually doing Hangout, you're just doing your broadcast, you don't actually have to hit screen share.
Oh,
You
okay.
can just bring the window up if you want to. But actually, no, never mind. Disregard.
Well, I think I was doing that earlier. Okay, we just had a couple of technical issues on our end. We just wanted to make sure we got them straight, but thanks, TJ. Appreciate it.
Yeah, let me know if you got any other issues.
Yeah, okay. Couple of things. I just want to start with what we are doing this week and how we're going to accomplish it. Today, I'm going to talk to you about the grammar errors issue, right? So we all have something to learn from this because when I read your diagnostic essays, many of you made grammatical errors that you probably find that you do this all the time or you write more informally, and that's okay if you're writing informally, but now that you're writing for the purpose of a college composition course, we need to write more formally, right? So we got to lose the informal, we got to pay attention to the rules, we got to learn the rules of grammar, and we've got to enforce them. So one of the things that I'm going to be working on today is what I call the 4 major errors. And these are the 4 things that we're going to make sure that you are just never going to commit again in a college level paper. That's going to happen today. On Wednesday, I am going to be out of town. So I'm leaving to go out of town right before this class begins, and I won't be back until the weekend. So I've set up on our Blackboard web pages a video lecture that will cover, it's about a 35-minute long video lecture, and it discusses a document that I have up on there that talks about creating what we call verb-based writing strategies, but it's all about the exactness and correctness issue. If you take a look at the syllabus, you don't have to look at the syllabus, but you'll see on the 14th, I have chapters 20, 21, and 22 are all about exactness, conciseness, and clarity. And that's what those verb-based writing strategies are going to help you do, right? Deliver exactness and conciseness, be clear, accurate, precise. That's what we want. So these verb-based writing strategies are going to be something that I'm going to be on the lookout for and that you need to learn. So 2 things we're doing this week, major grammar errors and then the verb-based writing strategies. These 2 things I'm going to accomplish on today with this lecture, and then on Wednesday is going to be the video lecture. And then on Friday, because I'm not going to be here, what I'm going to do on Wednesday morning is I'm going to post a grammar exam to the Blackboard website. And the grammar exam is just going to be a Word document, and there's going to be 20 questions on there, and on that grammar exam, you are going to, I think there's 14 grammar questions and 6 other questions. What I want to see on that grammar exam is I want you to open that document, and then I want you to type in a revision of those sentences, either correcting the grammar error or kind of restructuring the sentence in a way that you know is grammatically correct. One of the things about grammar that we are going to, we're going to hold this to be a pretty high standard, because once you start making those types of mistakes, they can be costly. And I want them to be costly in this course. If you make grammar errors, there's got to be a stiff penalty for them. So when you are making these grammar errors, if you are writing a sentence and it has, in this quiz, and it has a mistake in it, that's a grammar error that makes it either one of these 4 major errors: subject, verb, disagreement, comma splices, run-on sentences, sentence fragments. We'll talk about those in a minute. If you commit one of those in one of those sentences, you cannot get any credit for the sentence. In other words, the sentence is either right or it's wrong. So there's 14 of them, and you're going to need to make sure that you don't make any of those errors on those, because if you do, it can be it can be brutally costly. the other 6 questions I've got on there are sentences that I want you to revise. And I want you to revise them in accordance with the lecture that you're going to listen to on Wednesday. On Wednesday's lecture is the video lecture about verb-based writing strategies. I'm going to give you those 6 sentences, and I want you to rework those sentences and then just add those into the quiz on Friday as well. So here's my point, is that the quiz that I'm giving you on Friday is not a quiz where you have to, memorize things or anything else. All of this is open book, right? If you want, you can use whatever you want to complete that assignment, except another person. So what I'm hoping that you'll be able to do is to be able to look at those sentences, reconstruct them in the way that's accurate, and then send it back to me sometime on Friday afternoon before 5 o'clock. So if you want to take a look at that quiz ahead of time and start preparing your answers, but essentially what I'm expecting you to do is to come in on Friday and write the quiz during class time so that you can then send it to me on Friday afternoon. Is that all right? Does everybody understand exactly what I'm expecting of you? Is there anyone who has any questions? Is there anybody who doesn't understand what we're up to? Okay, good. So the quiz will be available to you starting Wednesday morning. It'll be on the Blackboard web pages. You can open it up and look at it at any point in time. If you want to begin working on it, ahead of class time on Friday, go right ahead. But on Friday during class time, you're going to come in and you're going to type up the answers to that question, to those questions, and you're going to save that document and send it to me via email. Everybody all right with that? Think of how easy this is going to be, because you've got grammar check and all of that. But look, I'm pretty smart. I can trick grammar check. All right? So the things I'm going to talk to you about today, I want you to pay close attention to, because grammar check isn't going to be so good at catching these types of errors. All right. I'm going to switch over now to, are you looking at me or are you looking at the screen that says grammatical correctness on here?
We see you.
Okay, great. All right. So at this point, what I would like to do is talk to you about the chapter readings that I assigned for you. So I'm going to switch over to the textbook, right? And I want you to know I asked you to read chapters 1, 2, 3, and 6A in the textbook. Now, chapter 1 is all about these identifying the parts of speech, right? What is a subject? What is a verb? What's a noun? What's a pronoun? All those things. And I'm all right with that. If you're not, look, to read all that stuff is just deadly. I'm going to make sense of it for you today by going over these things called, this document that I have. So all of the things that you're seeing here in chapter 1, I'm going to reinforce with you through this other document so that we can actually look at things kind of from a different perspective. Instead of overwhelming you with a whole bunch of rules, I want to just kind of teach you something. So let's go back to this document right here. All right. So grammatical correctness. Now, grammatical correctness is, why are we worried about this? Well, one of the things that that drives people like me crazy is that, and I'm having problems getting the screen to move. Hang on a second, guys. Are you seeing? I'm having trouble moving this thing. Okay, you should see that. That's fine. I'm having problems scrolling down the document. That's my problem right now. So I might have to change to something else in here. This document is on the Blackboard web pages. I just want you to know that, right? It's on Blackboard, and it is under the lecture for today. There should be a Word document that says 4 major errors, and it's available for you at any point in time. I'm going to break off of this, and I'm just going to open up that document this way. All right, now do you see it? Okay, you see that document, grammatical correctness? Everybody see this, right? Ms. Worrell, are you looking at the document or are you looking at me?
We can see the document.
Great, okay. Why are we talking about grammatical correctness? Well, when people identify good reading or good writing and bad writing, the one thing that most people know is grammatical accuracy. And this, if you are writing a paper and you're making grammar mistakes, that is one thing that is going to stand out as going that if someone is looking for a way to criticize you, if someone is looking for a way to find out if you're academically prepared, one thing that most people gravitate toward is grammatical correctness. So that's why I kind of highlight this here, is that grammar mistakes are often associated with elementary level thinking, and that may not be true. You may be a pretty smart person. You may have some really good thoughts. The problem is that if you write incomplete sentences, if you make subject-verb disagreements, if you make those kind of basic grammar errors, those types of mistakes damage our authority, right? We want to make sure that we're representing ourselves as being in control of the language, in control of the formalities, so that no one has room to criticize us. So I've written up this document, right? And I've made a point here of saying the most egregious of these errors is the 4 major errors, which I'm going to outline for you here in just a minute. How do we get to these things? Well, it's because we practice writing conversationally. We talked about this the other day. What I need you to be able to do is to write not as you speak, but to write as a writer would, which means that we have to follow the rules. So we play by the rules. We practice the rules. Did your mother ever tell you garbage in, garbage out? Yeah, well, if she did, she was talking about this. If we practice doing the wrong things all the time, then when it comes time to do them right, we're going to do them wrong. Right? It's the reason why you go through drill and all this other stuff at your school, because they want you to practice doing things the right way, so that when it comes time to do it, you just do it naturally. So if you practice writing poorly, then you are never going to be able to play by the rules and avoid these types of problems. So here are the 4 major errors. These 4 things are covered in the textbook. These are the chapters, right? Chapter 2 deals with sentence fragments. Chapter 3 deals with comma splices and run-on sentences. And Chapter 6A deals with subject-verb disagreement. So after today's lecture, if you want a reinforcement on any of this stuff, I suggest go back to the textbook, take a look at these chapters. They will reinforce what I'm saying. All right. Here is the subject-verb disagreement. Everybody who's sitting in this room recognizes that this sentence is a subject-verb disagreement, because we know that if we have more than one person, right, we have people that they run down the street. If I have a book, right, a singular book, then I would say that the book was not convincing, right? Everybody knows that. Yes, if you're making those types of errors in your writing, those are pretty bad, those are pretty embarrassing, and that's going to damage your credibility and your authority. However, subject-verb disagreement is not so simple, right? Those are the easy ones to catch. What we need to be able to do is we need to recognize that certain words that look singular are plural. I hear this all the time, right? When people are talking, about scientific studies, and they'll say something to the effect of, the data indicates that such and such is right or wrong, right? Well, data is a word that is plural. It's not singular in nature. So because we look at this word data, we think it's singular. This verb should be is. Well, no, it's not. Actually, the word data is plural. That's the reason why we need to look at this. When we see a noun, we need to think to ourselves, is it singular? If it is, we should make that word it. If it's plural, we should make that word they. So we need to say with data, they are accurate. The singular form of data is datum, right? And the same thing happens with media, right? Everyone says, well, the media is at fault for all of these problems that we have. Well, the media, right? Media means more than one. So we have to say the media are at fault. So these are words that exist in the English language that we need to know that are plural that we don't necessarily pay attention to. There's some other things in here that you can read along with, but the most easily, I guess, confusing ways of attributing subject-verb disagreement to your writing is this situation right here, where we're separating subjects from verbs with our phrases and clauses. For example, if you take a look at this sentence right here, a panel of experts agree or agrees that this procedure is best. How do I know if it's agree or agrees? Well, the rule is pretty simple. This is what I want you to be able to do. When you see a sentence like this and you're trying to figure out where the subject is, you ultimately can start by eliminating certain words and certain phrases from the possibility of being the subject. Obviously, we want our subjects to agree with our verbs. But in this situation right here, many people think that experts is the subject of the sentence. Experts is not the subject of the sentence because experts is part of a prepositional phrase. Do you know what a preposition is? If you don't, I'll tell you, right? And it's in chapter 1, right? I'm going to be using these grammatical terms. If you don't know what they are, you can go find them in chapter 1. But a preposition is a word that shows relationship. In, on, over, under, below, before. All those words, like whatever a rabbit can do to a tree, right? Go around the tree, under the tree, above the tree. Those are all prepositions. So whenever you see the word of, right, there's a preposition. That is a prepositional phrase, right? It's the beginning of a prepositional phrase. So there's a preposition, there will be an object to the preposition. So there will be a noun associated with it. That group of words right there can never be the subject of your sentence. So you can just cross that out, and now you go back to the sentence and think to yourself, well, what is doing the agreeing? It's a panel. So a panel agrees. Does everyone see that? I need you to be able to think this way while you're revising your sentences, right? Because when you're on Monday, when you come to class, you're going to actually have a draft of your paper ready to go for revision. I'm going to come to class on Monday down there because I'm not going to be able to do much by computer. So I'm going to come to class on Monday, and I'm going to expect that you're going to be doing this, right? We're going to go through the class time together, looking at subjects and verbs, looking at our sentences, trying to figure out how to make sense of the subject-verb disagreement stuff. Another issue that happens is that sometimes different other types of phrases can intervene, like containing the problems of the patient. There's another preposition, but containing the problems is a different kind of phrase. This is what we call a participle. We know it's a participle because it contains an ending here of ing. So it's an adjective. So we see here's a phrase that's an adjective. Here's a phrase that's a preposition. These two cannot be the subject of the sentence. The charts were doing the action. So the charts were placed on the nurse's desk. If I have any recommendations for you guys, it's to do this. Every sentence that you write, you need to plow through every sentence. And I'm not saying you do it when you're writing it. I'm saying you do it when the draft is done. You go through just to make sure that you haven't committed any of these errors, and you break down every sentence and you go on a hunt for where's my subject, where's my verb. So in this situation right here, I have a compound subject. I have the patient as well as her family members. I could even easily substitute the word and here too, the patient and her family members. Now I've got more than one person acting. I have to consider the subject as they consent to the treatment. Cancer of the lung in this situation, now, notice now, aha, prepositional phrase. I can't use that as the subject of my sentence. And I'm even using punctuation here to alert the reader that, hey, this is something that's kind of an outside or a non-essential element. So I look at this and I say cancer of the lung is treatable. Everybody see what I'm doing? I'm just breaking down every one of my sentences to find my subject and my verbs. And here's the situation. The contributions, there's my subject. Of a person is a prepositional phrase. To human progress is a prepositional phrase. I know my subject can't be there. So it's the contributions remain unknown. That is going to be the one that trips you up the most, right? Where the subject is pushed back from the verb and there's intervening words. And if you think for a second that progress is the subject in this sentence, right, you'll be saying, progress remains unknown. And that is certainly not what's happening there. It's contributions that are doing the acting. The contributions remain. So if you make this kind of mistake, human progress remains unknown, right, that's going to cost you. So you add up enough of these major grammatical errors and suddenly your paper isn't a paper anymore. It's just a mess. So we need to be on top of this. Now, here's some other examples of subject-verb disagreement, right? Sometimes our sentences are inverted. For example, a carpenter, a painter, a locksmith, and a plumber were in the group, right? If you take a look at this, for some reason, this writer tends to invert the sentence structure. What a mess, right? If you're writing sentences like this, you might consider starting over and revising it in a more subject-verb-object way, right? Where the subject is clear and the verb is right next to it. Or you just understand the fact that your subjects is here, right? All these different people, they were, and then in the group, you should recognize prepositional phrase, that can't be my subject, right? In this example up here, this is where we're going to talk about diction issues in the next, on Wednesday. I'm going to give you that lecture, that video lecture. I'm going to talk about using there is and there are as sentence starters, because this is what we call an irrelevant pronoun. And irrelevant pronouns mean that they don't have any relationship to a noun. They don't describe, and a pronoun usually takes the place of a noun, right? You have the word he, it takes the place of Bill. You have the word she, it takes the place of Jane. In this case, there should be a place. We should know where that place is. But there is no place in this sentence. So now I have to look at the sentence and find out, well, what is there, right? Several reasons is my subject now. So here's my subject over here. Reasons are there for this mistake. I still don't know where there is. This is a really informal type of sentence. And I would say, look, this sentence inversion, moving your subjects to the middle of a sentence and hiding them from your verb, is only going to create problems for yourself. Why not just put the sentence in the subject, verb, object format and just say several reasons for this mistake exist? You can do it that way. That might even be easier. Or if you're going to keep with the there, say several reasons are there for this mistake. That might help you. My point of all of this is that when you have convoluted sentence structure, you can lose track of your subjects and verbs, and you can cause yourself problems. All right? So understand that the subject-verb disagreement is not something that I can lecture to you. It's not something I can just map out all the rules. I'm giving you a bunch of examples here. The textbook's going to give you a bunch of examples in chapter 6a, but ultimately it comes down to when you write your sentence, we need to break it down, right? We need to look for every one of your sentences and find your subjects, find your verbs. So on Monday, when I get to class down there, I'm going to have you with the drafts of your papers, and I'm going to walk around and I'm going to say, look, I want you to go through your sentences right now, and I want you to identify in every one of your sentences where your subject is and where your verb is. And then we're going to go and do an investigation, whether you can identify those subjects and verbs and whether you can make them agree, right? That's what we're going to do. So there's some more information here, but I think this one is pretty important as well. There's a list of pronouns, and we call them indefinite pronouns. And their words like each, every, none, either. There's a list of them here. Anytime you see these words, you should be thinking singular, right? So if I have a sentence right here, every nurse, doctor, and hospital employee, and you're thinking to yourself, well, there's nurses, there's doctors, there's hospital employees, there's a whole bunch of people in this list. Well, that's not really the case. When we use the word every, we have to insert the word one in order for the sentence to make sense. So instead of thinking all these people, we need to say everyone needs to sign the document, right? Each of the administrators. As soon as you see of the administrators, you think prepositional phrase. That's not my subject. I got to go back to each, and I got to think to myself, each one has. So whenever you see this group of words, each, every, either, neither, everybody, make a list. Put these things in your note. Take them to your bathroom mirror so that when you see them in the morning, you can be reminded of them, what they do. These words are killers, right? If you make the mistake and you say each or every nurse, doctor, and hospital employee need, right? You're thinking they need. That's a subject-verb disagreement. That's going to cost you in your papers, all right? So there's other examples here too. Words like none can be both singular or plural. So this is one of the few cases when you look at the prepositional phrase to help you determine which that is. Is this singular or is this plural? Well, because it's candidates, we can now say that none is or none are. Right? So the candidates are competent. The last thing I want to talk to you about with subject-verb disagreement is this either or and neither nor situation. So whenever you have more than one doer of action, right, either the doctors or the nurse, in this situation, you're thinking to yourself, well, do I make the verb agree with doctors or do I make the verb agree with nurse? And in this situation, whether you have an either or and neither nor. So if you ever see the word or nor in your subject, you need to be asking yourself this question, right? Where's my verb? Where's my subject? I'm going to make the verb agree with the subject that's closest to it. So doctors isn't going to matter. Administrators isn't going to matter. The only thing that's going to matter is nurse and the board. That's going to be your subject. All right? So that's subject-verb disagreement. And look, I get it. It's agonizing. It's difficult to sit there and listen to this. It's impossible for you to just learn it by reading it. We're going to learn it by practice. the reason why this first paper is not going to count that much in terms of your grade, because I want to see you make mistakes. I want to see you learn from your mistakes. I want to see you go through this process and be able to start learning how to read your sentences and find out where those subjects and verbs are. All right. The next three issues are all grouped together, right? Comma splices, run-on sentences, and sentence fragments for a reason. These three things are important to read together because they're all the same kind of error. Can you make complete sentences? That is a problem that many of you had. Very few of you, when you wrote to me about your diagnostic essay, had subject-verb disagreements, even though there was a couple. This was the problem that most of you incurred. So let me do some explaining. In chapter 1, you will see the definitions to these terms, but I want to reinforce with you these definitions so that you have no confusion, right? We need to learn two terms if we're going to learn how to avoid these comma splices, run-on sentences, and sentence fragments, right? In order to learn this, we've got to learn this term, independent clause, and we got to learn this term, dependent clause. All right, an independent clause is nothing more than a sentence. It's a complete thought. It has a subject, it has a verb, it makes a complete thought. So I is my subject, never had is my verb, the ambition is my object, right? So there's my basic sentence. I never had the ambition to work in the field is a complete sentence. That's a complete thought. That's an independent clause. A dependent clause is a group of words that may contain a subject and verb. There it is right there. You see the highlight, I wanted, right? That's a subject, that's a verb, but that group of words can't stand on its own because of this word right here. That word, although, is a signifier of a dependent element. There's a list of words out there that are signifiers of dependent elements. I will give them to you right now. You need to write these down. You need to keep them somewhere on a list, right? Just as you have that word each and every and all those, these are a group of words that you need to know. These are all signifiers of dependent clauses. Although is one of them. When, while, if, since, and because. Those are all words that indicate dependence. When, while, if, since, because, and although are signifiers of dependent clauses. When, while, if, since, because, and although. You can add there a little asterisk next to the word as, because you can add the word as and put a little asterisk next to it, because as is sometimes used as a dependent clause, sometimes it's used as a preposition. But I want you to know that whenever you see a word, that one of those words, when, while, if, since, although, because, we're starting with a dependent clause, right? That's what we're dealing with. So in this group of words right here, right, although I wanted to work in the field, notice that it's dependent because it can't exist on its own. I can't put a period at the end of field and call that a sentence. That group of words right there has to attach itself to an independent clause in order for it to exist. So this group of words right here, although I wanted to work in the field, if I put a period at the end of that, I've created a major grammatical error. That's going to be a problem. So let's go just quick review. Independent clause, subject and a verb makes a complete thought. Dependent clause contains a subject and a verb, but there's a catchword in there that makes it dependent on something else. When, while, if, since, although, and because, and sometimes as. Everybody with me on this? I need you to know these terms because when you see these words, I need you to be able to differentiate between what they are and how they function. All right, dependent clauses can't stand on their own. Independent clauses can. All right, so chapter 3 in the textbook will tell you about comma splices and fused sentences, run-on sentences. Here's the basic rule. I'm going to boil it down for you so you get this information in a way that can be easily processed so that when you're proofreading your papers, you can do a check on your document to make sure you're not making this type of errors. All right, a comma splice. A comma splice, a major grammatical error, but the problem is that it's two independent clauses that are joined together illegally, right? When I say illegally, it means that you should recognize that in this sentence, health professionals must now collect payment for services rendered. That's a sentence. They must also provide clear documentation to do so. That's a sentence. I cannot take two independent clauses, two sentences, and paste them together this way with a comma, right? There's only three ways in the English language to join together independent clauses, right? Here they are. If I'm going to correct that sentence, I could do it this way. I could take a period and a capital letter, right? Every second grader knows this. So health professionals must now collect payment for services rendered. That's a complete sentence. Period, capital letter. They must also provide clear documentation to do so. That's one way to join together independent clauses. Another way to join together independent clauses is to use a comma and coordinating conjunction. Do you remember Schoolhouse Rock? Conjunction, junction, what's your function? Remember that from Saturday morning TV and all that? Right, conjunctions. I got and, but, and, or. There's my conjunctions right there, and, but, and, or. Now, there's other conjunctions, but we're not going to use these because they're more informal in nature. So let's just concentrate on and, but, and, or to join together independent clauses. So another way I can join together these independent clauses is by taking one independent clause, adding comma and coordinating conjunction, and then adding my second independent clause. Does everybody see that? I can join two independent clauses with a comma and a coordinating conjunction, and my sentence is grammatically correct. What I cannot do is I cannot join these independent clauses with a coordinating conjunction without the comma. The comma has to be there, because if the comma is there with the coordinating conjunction, it's telling us, hey, a new independent clause is coming. Your educated audience will know that. And then finally, the last way to join independent clauses together is by using a semicolon. Right? A semicolon is the dot comma, right? It's that little, the dot over top of the comma. What I've got is an independent clause here, an independent clause here, and I can join them with that semicolon, but I can do that because the semicolon joins together two closely related sentences. This is not licensed for you to go through your paper and eliminate all periods from your paper and to substitute in semicolons. Semicolons only join together closely related independent clauses. So if I do it this way, it's kind of choppy, right? It feels like there's no transition between them. That's why we reserve this construction down here, a semicolon with a conjunctive adverb, what we call a transitional adverb. And here's a list of these things right down here at the bottom of this page. Words like however, consequently, therefore, thus, right? These words are these conjunctive adverbs. These are words that you can use to join together independent clauses with a semicolon as well, right? So let's review. 3 ways to join together independent clauses. There's only 3 ways in the English language: a period, capital letter, a comma, coordinating conjunction, or a semicolon with however. Is everybody with me on that? Great. Because that stuff is vitally important. If you misuse a semicolon, you can create a major grammatical error. If you misuse the comma with the coordinating conjunction, you can create a major grammatical error. And that's essentially what a run-on sentence does, and I'll show you that in a minute. But if I take a look at these examples right here, all right, I've got a coordinating conjunction right there. The room was blue and yellow. Just because I see that coordinating conjunction doesn't mean that I put a comma there, right? The only time I'm going to put a comma there is when I'm joining together independent clauses. So I have to ask myself, I'm going to look at that coordinating conjunction. I'm going to look at what's on the front side of it. And I'm going to ask myself, is that a sentence? The room was blue. Is that a sentence? Of course it is. Is this word a sentence? No, it's not. So because that's not a sentence, I cannot put a comma here with that construction. Does everybody see that? You need to know this. You need to know this rule because it is vitally important. You cannot put a comma here because you don't have 2 independent clauses on both sides of that coordinating conjunction. This is just a compound element. The room was 2 things. It was blue and it was yellow. The same thing happens here. The maniac blocked the elevator. That's an independent clause. But pulled the fire alarm. Is that an independent clause? No. So because I don't have 2 independent clauses, I cannot put the comma there. Same thing here. He drove up the coast. That's an independent clause. Into Maine, that's not an independent clause. I cannot put a comma before the coordinating conjunction. If I write it this way, though, look how things change. He drove up the coast. That's an independent clause. He drove into Maine. That's an independent clause. Here's the comma coordinating conjunction. Now it's right. All of these are right up here because they don't take commas. And this one's right here because it does take a comma. in this situation right here, independent clause, comma, coordinating conjunction, that's the rule. Are there any questions about this? I know this is a lot of heavy grammar stuff that's not very exciting, but if you've got questions, if you've got issues, then you need to let me know. All right. Do I hear mutterings? Do you have a question? Nope. Okay, good. All right. So a run-on sentence, right, would be joining together independent clauses without using any marks of punctuation. Health professionals must provide clear documentation to receive payment for services. Insurance companies require it. Nobody in their right mind would write a sentence like this for a formal paper because we don't know where one sentence ends and one sentence begins, right? But if I were to go up here, right, and if I were to put a comma after blue, if I were to insert that comma right here, now that could be considered a run-on sentence, or should be considered a comma splice, right? Because this is an independent clause, but this one isn't. So I've got to be aware of the fact that when I'm joining sentences together, I need to know where one sentence ends and when one begins. That is governed by those three rules: period, capital letter, comma, coordinating conjunction, semicolon. That's it. 3 ways. That's what the English language allows us to do. The last of the major grammatical errors, right? And I call these major because if you start committing a number of these things, your paper's done, right? It's no longer a paper. It's not a college level writing. The last of them is a sentence fragment. A sentence fragment sometimes looks like this. And again, this is like one of the most egregious forms. A broken leaning schoolhouse standing in a field, right? That doesn't work as a sentence, right? Because there's no verb. A broken leaning schoolhouse standing in a field fell down. Well, now that's a sentence because there's a verb that goes with that subject. But right now, all I've got is a bunch of adjectives describing that schoolhouse. It's broken, it's leaning, it's standing. But it's not doing anything. It's just being described. I could say a broken leaning schoolhouse stood in a field. No, it's an independent clause. But the way it's written right now is just a bunch of words that doesn't make an independent clause. But because I've got a capital letter and a period, I'm saying that it is an independent clause. I'm saying that that's a sentence, and that's not right. So you would be marked off for doing something like that. Now, this is another form of a sentence fragment. She wanted to go back to college. That's an independent clause. And then look at this. Although she did not complete her schooling, that is a sentence fragment. Why? What is this group of words that I've got highlighted right here? Dependent clause. And I know it's a dependent clause because of that word right there. Right. So dependent clauses cannot stand on their own. They cannot be identified as sentences. So if you write a dependent clause like this, right, you're going to get dinged for creating a sentence fragment. Somebody came up to me this morning and said, hey, Dr. Terryberry, what if I put a comma after although? And I'm like, no, because although is not on that list of words that those transitional adverbs, right? Like however, consequently, although is only part of an identifier for dependent clauses. So keep that in mind, right? Whenever you see when, while, if, since, although, because, and sometimes as, when you see those words, they need to, the group of words attached to them need to all be connected to an independent clause somewhere. They cannot be a sentence unto themselves. Same thing with this example down here, right? Because he had seen the demonstration before and did not need to see it again, it's not a sentence, it's a dependent clause. Now I can correct these very easily by just attaching this dependent clause to this. I could write, although she did not complete her schooling, comma, she wanted to go back to college, right? I could say, because he had seen the demonstration before and did not need to see it again, comma, we left the auditorium early. I can just add those dependent clauses to the sentence. But the way that's written right now, where they are identified as sentences themselves, that is a sentence fragment. And the last of the sentence fragment types that you need to be aware of is this one right here. When we talked about coordinating conjunctions, and, but, and, or, right, the term is coordinating conjunction. It means that it connects two similar things. In this situation right here, right, you've got a coordinating conjunction that's starting a sentence. That is against the rules. You cannot start a sentence with and, but, and, or. Right, make that a note to yourself. You cannot start a sentence with and, but, and, or. If you do, you're creating a sentence fragment. And, but, and, or need to be connecting either like elements or independent clauses. Questions, problems? Do you have any issues that you want to raise with this? I want to bring these exercises up because these things are going to help us identify our problems, right? Let's take a look at sentence number 1. Every one of the professional golfers donate their time to charity, right? Where's my subject? Someone tell me where the subject is. I'll ask you, is it golfers? No, right. And why can't it be golfers? Prepositional phrase. There it is right there. So this group of words automatically gets excluded. So now my subject is right here. Everyone. What should it be? All right. Say, yeah, we won't be back in time, right? Okay, I'll contact you tomorrow. Thank you. Well, the fire drill ended that. What I suggest you do is you look at those examples and come see me if you've got questions with shooting me an email. Thanks, folks. We'll talk to you soon.